For years, Miles Guo told his followers he was building a financial revolution, a media company, an elite membership club, a global cryptocurrency, and he promised their money was protected. But prosecutors said the investments were built on lies. More than $1 billion poured in. While investors waited for returns, Guo and his family acquired a mansion, a Lamborghini, a Rolls Royce, a Bugatti, and a yacht. In 2024, a jury found him guilty, and in 2026, the man once followed by thousands was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. How did an exiled businessman turn political loyalty and online influence into one of the largest fraud schemes of its kind? This is Fraudology, where we investigate the world's biggest scams, financial crimes, and the people who get away with them until they don't. His name was Guo Wengui, also Ho Wan Kwok, Miles Kwok, Brother Seven, the principal, boss. A businessman who left China and later settled in the United States. Online, he became something bigger than a businessman, a voice. He broadcast for hours at a time, positioning himself as a critic of the Chinese Communist Party, a man in exile, fighting for a cause. Chinese-speaking followers around the world tuned in. Some saw a political dissident. Some saw a symbol of resistance. Some simply saw a wealthy, connected man who seemed to know things they didn't. That mix, wealth, defiance, access, built trust fast. But that audience would soon become more than a political following. It would become an investor base. In 2018, Guo announced two new organizations, the Rule of Law Foundation and the Rule of Law Society. Prosecutors said he presented them as charities. He told potential donors he personally put in the first $100 million. That promise, prosecutors said, is what made people believe. Not just believe in the cause, believe in him. The organizations became tied to a public campaign against the Chinese government. And for many supporters, giving felt less like charity and more like joining a movement. That's the bridge. Once that trust existed, Guo introduced his followers to an opportunity that sounded far more profitable. The first rung on the ladder was GTV Media, a share in his media company. That was the pitch. Investors were told they could buy in early before the rest of the world caught on. The SEC later said the offering was never registered. Regulators accused Guo and his financial advisor, William J., of raising money through offerings that were both unregistered and fraudulent. And according to the SEC, roughly $100 million from that offering didn't go toward building the media company at all. It moved to a hedge fund, one that benefited a company owned by Guo's own son. 2 years later, in a related 2021 case, GTV and other entities agreed to pay more than $450 million in penalties, interest, and disgorgement. Money the SEC said would go back to harmed investors. That was a civil settlement, not the criminal case. Keep those separate. They matter later. But the pattern was already forming. Money in, a story of opportunity, and somewhere underneath it, a second, quieter set of books. Once the GTV offering drew regulatory attention, prosecutors said Guo's network simply moved to the next rung. The pitch this time, lend money to his network, get interest. Investors were loaned funds directly, and in return they were promised interest payments, plus access to that same GTV stock. Prosecutors said this program alone brought in another $100 million. Followers, loans, promised interest and stock, funds controlled by Guo's network. Each step simple, each step still resting on the trust built by the one before it. By now, $100 million. But the next program offered something even more powerful than investment returns. Belonging. G Clubs was pitched as something exclusive, pay to belong. Membership, status, access to a circle around Guo himself, and in some cases the promise of GTV stock on top of it. Prosecutors said G Clubs alone raised at least $240 million. For many members, the Justice Department said that membership delivered little or nothing of real value in return. But the pitch was never really about the benefits on paper. It was status, loyalty, belonging to a group other people couldn't get into, the fear of being left out, while everyone around you seemed to be getting in. Added up, and the loan program and the club alone had already pulled in well over $340 million. And Guo wasn't finished. In 2021, during a live GTV broadcast, Guo unveiled something new, the Himalaya exchange, and with it, H-Coin and H-Dollar, a currency that lived in his computer. That's the simplest way to say what prosecutors say it actually was. It was marketed like cryptocurrency, like a stable coin, backed by something solid. But here's the difference that matters. A real cryptocurrency is a glass vault. Anyone can look inside. Every transaction recorded on a public ledger, verified by a whole network, not by one company's word. Prosecutors said H-Coin wasn't that. They said its numbers lived in a locked room, one only Guo's company could see into. The SEC alleged Guo claimed 20% of H-Coin's value was backed by gold. The SEC also alleged he personally promised to cover investors if they lost money. Neither claim, regulators said, held up. And still, hundreds of millions of dollars flowed in. The coins looked digital, the wealth looked real. But by prosecutors' account, most of it existed only inside a system one man controlled. Add the crypto to everything before it, and the total prosecutors described came to more than $1 billion. So where did it go? Trial evidence and the Justice Department point to the same place. $26.5 million mansion in New Jersey, an $832,000 Lamborghini, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Bugatti, 2 multi-million-dollar sports cars, prosecutors said, for Guo's son, a $2 million yacht. The SEC separately alleged around $40 million went toward buying and renovating that mansion, and about $3.5 million more toward Ferrari, also for his son. Investor funds moved through entities Guo controlled, into family companies and accounts, into a mansion, supercars, and a yacht. Between 2022 and 2023, authorities seized more than $630 million in alleged proceeds and property. Not shot like a music video, shot like evidence, because that's what it was. In March 2023, Guo was arrested. The Justice Department brought a criminal case in the Southern District of New York. The SEC filed a parallel civil action. His criminal trial lasted about 7 weeks. On July 16, 2024, a federal jury reached its verdict. Guilty, racketeering conspiracy, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and more. Everything prosecutors had alleged for years. Now findings a jury had actually reached beyond a reasonable doubt. On June 29, 2026, U.S. District Judge Annalisa Torres handed down the sentence. 30 years in federal prison. The court ordered Guo to forfeit $889 million, including his interest in the mansion, the Lamborghini, the Rolls-Royce Phantom, and the Bugatti. He was also ordered to pay a $900 special assessment. The government said thousands of victims in the United States and around the world were affected. Forfeiture isn't the same as repayment. Not every dollar taken will find its way back, but the sentence was final, 30 years. So why did so many people stay in, program after program, year after year? Political loyalty, a shared sense of persecution, the comfort of a community that understood you. Wealth and status can look like proof. A man this rich, this connected, surely wouldn't need to lie. And promises of protection lowered the guard even further. If he said he'd personally cover losses, why would you question the upside? This is how affinity fraud works. Not strangers targeting strangers. It targets people who already share something, a belief, an identity, a cause, and uses that shared identity to quiet the doubt. That doesn't make every person in Guo's orbit part of the scheme. It makes them part of the audience he built first, and later asked to trust with their money. Miles Guo did not build his schemes by approaching strangers with no reason to trust him. He built an audience first. He offered them a mission, then a media company, then a club, then loans, then cryptocurrency. Each new promise depended on the credibility created by the last. By the time the system collapsed, more than $1 billion had moved through the network. The mansion, the cars, the yacht, the digital coins, they projected wealth. But a federal jury concluded the empire was built with money taken through fraud. And in 2026, the man who promised his followers financial protection was sentenced to spend the next 30 years in prison. Follow the money, expose the truth. This is Fraudology. The biggest scams are the ones you haven't heard about yet. And somewhere, another one is unfolding right now. We'll see you in the next investigation.